page 798.
Apologies for speaking out of turn earlier.
No. The people, it's natural. It just sometimes guys don't want to hear other people answering because then it makes them feel bad. If the teacher answers, then they feel, otherwise it makes a guy look like a.
Well, it's against halacha.
It's against halacha to paskin a halacha. It's against halacha to paskin a halacha in front of one's Rebbe. I'm not your Rebbe.
Speak in front of somebody who's greater in wisdom, also, no?
Yeah, it's not against halacha. It's certainly against ethics. It's certainly against ethics. The Gemara, there's a Mishnah in Pirkei Avos that says that there are 7. Guys, close. Thank you. The Mishnah in Pirkei Avos says that there are 7 characteristics of a wise man. I say the opposite by a golem. A golem is an unfinished piece of material. So the Mishnah in Pirkei Avos says that there's a wise man, and the opposite of a wise man is a chacham. Yeshivat Ohr begolem. A golem is it's like if you have a piece of, let's say a piece of metal that's not yet formed into the pot that you want to make it in. You took a piece of metal, you're going to form it into a pot. Until it's formed, it's called a golem. It's unformed, it's unfinished. So somebody who behaves a certain way, it just demonstrates that he's unfinished as a person. For example, he answers a question before hearing the full question, or he interrupts somebody when he's speaking. There's 7 characteristics over there. Whereas a wise man always listens to the question. You hear the question, and doesn't interrupt people when they're speaking. And so there's a whole list over there. There is a halacha that's somebody who paskins a halacha in front of his Rebbe. Now the Rebbe is chayav bisa. He's liable for death penalty, not by Beis Din in the hands of heaven. That he paskins halacha in front of his Rebbe. But there the Rebbe means what the Gemara calls Rabbo Muvhak. Rabbo Muvhak means the Rebbe who has taught him most of his Torah. That's the same halacha that if somebody sees his father drowning and his Rebbe drowning, he has to save his Rebbe first. But that's only for Rabbo Muvhak, the Rebbe who has taught him most. That doesn't exist nowadays. We don't have Rabbo Muvhak. On the other hand, I once had a guy years ago, I was in Kolol at the time, and I think it was Chol HaMoed Pesach or Chol HaMoed Sukkos, and I messed up in davening. I forgot Yalav Yavos, said 2 Yalav Yavos. I don't remember what I did. One way or another, I messed up. So a friend of mine who was in Kolol was talking to a big Rav. So I walked over, I finished davening. I didn't know if I have to repeat the Shemona Esrei or not. So I walked over to this Rav, and I said to him, this is what I did or didn't do. Do I have to repeat the Shemona Esrei? So before he could say anything, my friend said, yeah, you have to. So I looked up at the Rav, and he was like that, what he told you is accurate. Okay, so I walk away, and I finish my Shemona Esrei. So my friend comes over to me after, he says, by the way, after you left, he turned to me and he said, you realize now you're chayiv misa, don't you? You realize now you're liable for death penalty, don't you? Don't do it again. That's what the guy said. Now he was tactful enough. He was tactful enough that he waited till I left, so the guy wouldn't be embarrassed. But the guy even said, as he said it, I don't know why I blurted it out, But because there's a certain breach of etiquette, if you don't, what do you call it? By the way, this Rav, you want to hear something amazing? Listen to this. There was a yeshiva. Make yourself comfortable. There was a yeshiva. A certain bacher in the yeshiva, Yossi, did something wrong. A mainstream yeshiva, not like Ohr Somayach, a mainstream yeshiva. So the bacher did something wrong. So this guy was, I know what it was. He was the mashgiach in the yeshiva. The mashgiach is what the rabbinic supervisor, as opposed to one of the rebbeim that teaches the guys. He was the mashgiach. So he used to stand, yeshivas are built on, they have a seder. At the yeshiva, they have the morning seder, afternoon seder, and in many of the mainstream yeshivas, they take attendance. They expect you to be there on time. So he would stand there at the door when the boys are filing into the beis medrash, and just to kind of look the boys over, see who's coming late, that sort of thing. And he's standing there, and as he's standing there, this guy Yossi comes in, and as the rabbi is standing there, Yossi pulls a quarter out of his pocket, and he says, here's a tip for the doorman. So he said to the rabbi. So he says to him, Yossi, go up to your room right now. You are a mechutzah. Mechutzah means you're a brazen person. You're a chutzpahdik. Go up to your room, pack your bags. You're immediately expelled from the yeshiva. 20 years later, this Mashiach walks into a wedding. Guy walks over, he's got a salt and pepper beard. He walks over him with a not so friendly look on his face. He says, "Hi, do you remember me?" So Mashiach says to him, "Yes, Yossi, I remember you. Not only I remember you, I can tell you that when you left our yeshiva, you went to Yeshiva A, and your chavrusas were B and C. And then you left that yeshiva, and you got married, you were learning in Kollel, and your chavrusas were D, E, and F. And after that, there was a position that opened up in a Yeshiva Ktana, and you became a Rebbe in the afternoon in the Yeshiva Ktana, which is where your position today." So he looks at me and says, "How could you possibly know that?" He says, "Yossi, listen, when I expelled you from the yeshiva, that was for your own good. You were a mechutzef, and that was the straw that broke the camel's back. You needed to teach them, taught a lesson, once and for all. But just because I expelled you doesn't mean that my responsibility ended. And then, didn't you ever realize that when you got accepted to the next yeshiva, your chavrusas were just a little better than what you really should have had? And didn't you realize you got accepted to a very prestigious kollel where a lot of people were trying to get in, and somehow you managed to get in? And didn't you realize that you got a position teaching in a yeshiva where many people wanted the position? Somehow you managed to get the position. Yes, I've been pulling the strings behind the curtain for 20 years. Behatzlacha." He turned around and walked away. Right. So this is it. And I know the man. And it's 100% something he could do. It's 100% something he'll wait till the opportunity comes. And then eventually he let him know. Can you imagine? Talk about being speechless. Like, oh, really? Okay, 798. Vaydaber Hashem al Moshe lemor, Shelach lecha anoshim v'yasur eretz Canaan asher ani nosen livnei Yisrael. Send men, ish echad lamate avosav tishlachu kol nosi b'hem. You send one man per tribe. So we have over here the episode of the spies. And it's interesting because the spies only functioned when the room was air conditioned. So please turn on the air conditioner. We don't want them to bring back a report that Eretz Yisrael is hot. Now, do we? So what do you call it? So the spies are sent out. Now there are different approaches to what goes on over here, what happened over here. There are many different approaches among the commentaries. One of the approaches is that the Jewish people are about to go into land and they're going to make a conquest of land of Israel. Now, what do you do as a human being? What we call basic hishtadlus. Hishtadlus means you make an effort. You need parnasa. What do you do for parnasa? You work. You got to work. Why? Because Hashem said, I'm a man of faith. So I could either sit in a base medrash all day and learn, or I could lie in a hammock all day and Hashem will provide. That's not how the world works. Hashem expects you to make hishtadlus. So if you're learning in Kollel and you have a father-in-law who supports you, or you have the Kollel pays you, or your wife works, whatever, okay, that's considered nowadays responsible hishtadlus. You can't just say, well, I'm going to learn, somebody would support me, because you're not holding at that level. You're about to conquer a land. What is natural hishtadlus when you're going to go in to conquer a land? There's a reconnaissance mission. You send in your spies to go check out the land and see, how are we going to take the land? Now, where was the flaw? I'm skipping ahead in the story. You know where the major flaw here was? The flaw was that if a general sends a corporal to go spy, he says, okay, listen, we're going to take that hill. I want you to go check out what is the best way to take the hill. Should we come up from the right, north, from the south? Should we not? What's the best way to take the hill? And then the guy comes back and he says, sir, we shouldn't take the hill. I didn't send you for your opinion. That decision was already made. I didn't send you for your opinion. I sent you to tell me how, not if. And that's where they stepped out of line. They stepped out of line because they bring back a report and they say to the Jewish people, no, we can't go in. Moshe Rabbeinu says we could, and they say we can't. That's the flaw. That is, at the most basic level, that's the flaw of the spies, plus the fact that they brought a negative report about the land of Israel. You don't say anything bad about the Gemara says Rav Ami and Rav Asi. There was a guy who had in his living room. There's a guy in his living room who had an air conditioner. And on his air conditioner, it said, this is the air conditioner of Rav Ami and Rav Asi. Rav Ami and Rav Asi were Amoroim. They did not have air conditioners. And this frum guy had on his air conditioner, it's a sign that said the air conditioner of Rav Ami and Rav Asi. Why was that? Because Rav Ami and Rav Asi, when they were in what do you call it, if the Chachamim were standing on a hot day and they were in the shade, they were in the heat, in the sun, they would have them move over to the shade so that they shouldn't complain that it's hot. And if it was a cold day, they would move them into the sun so they shouldn't complain that it's cold. So you shouldn't be complaining about Eretz Yisrael. There's one of the other Amoraim where every time he saw stones or pebbles or something on the road, he would move them out of the way so nobody should trip, so that they shouldn't badmouth Eretz Yisrael. There's a difference there between that and talking about the various forms of bureaucracy that we run into in Israel, like being frustrated because Bar Ilan Street is always clogged up because they're building a train for the last since the time of creation. They've been building they've been running this train track and costing me a lot of time. That's different than complaining about the inherent beauty of Eretz Yisrael. We try to in the house. I do not always succeed. I don't always succeed. We try to make a point of not saying when it's a really hot day, you're not trying to say, oh boy, was it hot outside. That we shouldn't be complaining about Eretz Yisrael. Right? So the flaw over here is A, you offered your opinion, and B, you spoke Lashon Hara about Eretz Yisrael. That's the flaw. Now, what happens is Moshe Rabbeinu says, and there are many different opinions whether Moshe, they're among the commentaries about he should have sent them, he didn't send them, it wasn't a good idea, whatever it was, Moshe Rabbeinu is sending them into Eretz Yisrael. Now, the Torah then mentions the various members of the tribe. Take a look at the fifth pasuk from the Ve'elish Shmosam, fifth line from the top. These are the names of the men that went into Eretz Yisrael. Lamate Ruven Shemua ben Zakur, Lamate Shimon Shaphat ben Hor. Go through a list of names. And then you get, the fifth one is Lamate Ephraim Hoshea bin Nun. His name is Hoshea. And then, where is Kalev? Did I skip Kalev already? Yeah. One line above is Lamate Yehuda Kalev ben Yefuna. Now the word Kalev sounds like what? Kalev, which is what? A dog, right? So there is an idea that Kalev, his name, Kalev, is because, dogs are very brazen. Sometimes you get even the small little poodle, the dog's barking at you, like who are you, buddy? So if he's a Doberman, he doesn't have to say anything. If a Doberman, just all he's got to do is look at you. But you get these little dogs, very brazen. Kalev stands up against the entire Jewish people. Kalev stands up against the broccoli. The brazenness, the Kalev is related to the word Kalev because he's got the brazenness to stand up against the Jewish people, number one. And number two, Kalev also breaks into two words, kol, all, lev, his heart. That his heart was fully devoted to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Kalev. By the way, who's he married to? Who's Kalev married to? He's married to Miriam. Kalev is married to Miriam, Moshe Rabbeinu's sister. He's Moshe Rabbeinu's brother-in-law, which is all part of the story. Now, these people go, which by the way, I'm just jumping ahead. By the way, that's one of the reasons, I said this tongue-in-cheek, but I don't think it's so tongue-in-cheek. What happened right at the end of the previous Parsha? What happened at the end of the previous Parsha? Was that?
His wife got Tzara.
His wife, Miriam was outside the camp for 7 days with Tzara, with leprosy for speaking Lashon Hara. So one of the reasons Kalev may be hesitant is because Kalev knows what happens when you speak Lashon Hara. Remember, this is a guy who ate tuna fish for a week. Right? His wife was outside the camp, So he knows what happens when you speak Lashon Hara. Whereas what do you call it? Lamate Ephraim Hoshea bin Nun. Now, one of the commentaries points out, if you take a look in, where is it? Yeah, Lamate Ephraim Hoshea bin Nun. Pay attention carefully now. It's 8 lines from the top. And then it says, Lamate Binyamin Palti ben Rafu, Lamate Zul and Gadiel ben Sodi, and then it says, Lamate Yosef, Lamate Menashe, Gadi ben Sosi. Right, the tribe of Yosef, the tribe of Menashe, Gadi ben Susi. Now, Yosef had 2 sons. Page 798. Yosef had 2 sons. One was Menashe and one was Ephraim. So the commentaries ask, why Ephraim, it says, Lamate Ephraim, Hoshea bin Nun. Why doesn't it say over there, Lamate Yosef, Lamate Ephraim? Whereas by Menashe, 2 lines, 2 psukim later, it says, Lamate Yosef, Lamate Menashe, Gadi ben Susi. You see the question? Everybody hear the question? Yosef had 2 sons, Menashe and Ephraim. When it mentions the tribe of Ephraim, it just says, Lamate Ephraim, Hoshea bin Nun. When it mentions Menashe, it says, Lamate Yosef, by the tribe of Yosef, Lamate Menashe, what's his name? Gadi ben Susi. So why is it that when by Menashe, it ascribes the tribe to Yosef, but by Ephraim, which is Yoshua bin Nun, it doesn't? You hear the discrepancy. Why does by one yes and one no? Anybody got an idea?
The zchut of the father is going to hold the sins of the descendants?
Oh, you're very close. You're very close.
So you have to bring Joseph to...
You're very close. Yeah, but it didn't work. I mean, remember, Yeshua ended up being the good guy, and this Gadi ben Susi is one of the...
Yeshua doesn't need his father.
He doesn't need. We'll see. We'll see how much he does. Because Moshe Rabbeinu says a special prayer for him. So the commentators say the opposite. What did Yosef do? He brought a negative report about his brothers. Which one of these two brought a negative report? Yoshua bin Nun or Gadi ben Susi? Gadi ben Susi was the one who brought the negative report. So it's ascribed to Yosef that characteristic of the negative report that came down to him. That's why the one who brought the negative report, there is an association with Yosef over there. Whereas the one who brought the positive report, there is no association. That's one of the ideas. Now, Moshe Rabbeinu sends them up, and if you take a look in Pasuk 16, Eilish Mosa Anashe Shelach Moshe Asur Zaaretz, Vayikra Moshe leHoshea bin Nun Yehoshua. Moshe names Hoshea Yehoshua. Now Rashi says over here, left column, top line. Vayikra Moshe leHoshea, Nispalel Olav, he davened for him, Ka Yoshiacha me'atzas meraglim, Hashem should save you from the plot of the spies. And there are two ways to understand this. I mean, it sounds like, well, if you knew there's a plot, so why are you sending them? So there are two ways to understand that. One way is that in case there's trouble, in case something goes wrong, I'm davening for you. I'm davening for you in case there is something that happens over here goes wrong. Number two, which is I think more likely, is that Rav Hirsch says this was when Moshe Rabbeinu named him Yehoshua. What's the difference between Hoshea and Yehoshua? Hoshea means past tense. Yehoshua is future tense. The one who saved you in the past, the one who delivered you in the past, he will deliver you in the future. Rav Hirsch says this was a public announcement. That Moshe Rabbeinu was saying in front of the entire Jewish people that, and he's got the opportunity because he's got his disciple, he says, it makes a public, Yehoshua, that you have nothing to worry about. Yehoshua, they are the Hashem, the same God that delivered you, he will deliver you in the future. You have no problem going into the land of Israel. And therefore, Moshe Rabbeinu is saying it somewhere in the subconscious, call it what you will, is also, it becomes a prayer for Yoshua that he should be saved from the plot of the spies. Now there are Mefarshim that say that Moshe Rabbeinu specifically davened for Yoshua because he knew that Yoshua was humble. And sometimes the concern is that a humble person may go with, may be affected by peer pressure. When you got 10 peers over here who may be saying that the land is not good, Yoshua in his humility may avoid his own opinion and agree with them, and therefore Moshe Rabbeinu says a special tefillah for Yoshua. That's what the Mefarshim say. Okay, but I want to get to one point over here. That's why I'm moving a little faster because there's an absolute mind-boggling idea here. But I want to show you. So first of all, he says, okay, I want you to go up there, check the people, are they strong, and then they come back from the land. Now, if you take a look, page 800, 4 lines from the top. So in pasuk it says Vayalu Vayasuru Esa Oretz, and by the way, they're not called Meraglim. Right now in the beginning, what are they called? Shlach lecha Anoshim V'Yasuru Esa Oretz. The first pasuk says V'Yasuru. How does the article translate it? They should spy out the land, but it doesn't say L'Ragel. L'Ragel generally means something negative. V'Yasuru comes from the Hebrew word Yitaron. Yitaron means the benefits. Yitaron means something good. Come back with, tell us what's good about it. Tell us what's good about it. Anybody can see the bad. Tell us what's good. And the same thing over here. Vayalu vayasuru es haaretz. And then what happens in Pasuk Chav Gimel, 7 lines from the top? Vayavo ad Nachal Eshkol. They come to a place called Nachal Eshkol. Vayichrusu misham zemora v'eshkol anovim echad. Vayisa'u bamot b'shnaim umina rimonim umina teinim. Now listen to this. So they go over there are 12 guys. 8 of them are carrying a cluster of grapes. Those are big grapes. The Gemara says that at one point in Eretz Yisrael, when people were good, they would put a grape down in the house and attach a spout to the grape. That's where they get the wine from. You turn on the grape, right? Put a spout in the grape. That's what the blessing of Eretz Yisrael. The potential is great. Right? You have one grape, and no, not only that, if 8 guys got to carry a cluster of grapes, imagine 8 men carry a cluster. Imagine how big these grapes were. So it's like nowadays, you didn't ask for a few grapes. You put a grape on it, I'll have a piece of grape. It's like putting a watermelon on the table. I'll have a piece of watermelon, except in those days you put a grape on. So 8 guys carried grapes. 1 carried a pomegranate, and 1 carried a fig. Now these are massive, oversized fruits. Now, what's the intent of having massive, oversized fruit? Remember, data is a funny thing. You could read something as the cup half full. Is the grape half full or is the grape half empty? Right? What was the point of showing such beautiful, luscious fruits? What's the point of showing the beautiful? That the Jewish people would see what a rich land Eretz Yisrael is. Yeah, but there are 2 ways to interpret that. Oh, wow, if those are such big grapes, then the people must have big mouths. That means they must be big people. How are we possibly going to conquer them? So you could misinterpret it, and that was the purpose of the spies, to bring back these fruits to intimidate the Jewish people. They brought it back to show the people, look, you think we're going in over there? Look at this stuff. Imagine what the people look like. We see giants, right? We see giants. There's only one question, gentlemen. So why didn't they bring, there are 7 species. And Eretz Yisrael was blessed with 7 species. There's wheat and barley, so we'll leave that out for the time being. Then there's olives, dates, grapes, figs, and pomegranates. What did they bring back? They brought back grapes, and they brought back figs, and they brought back pomegranates. How come they didn't bring back olives and dates? What happened to the olives and dates? They were little. Why were they little? Why should the olives and dates be little?
Oil and honey?
Yeah, and therefore what? Therefore what? Okay, so the basic answer is they didn't bring back olives and dates because Yeshua and Kalev were each supposed to carry one of them, and they didn't want to bring them back because they weren't interested in intimidating the Jewish people. So they didn't carry an olive and he didn't carry a date. But why specifically olives and dates? So the Chassam Sofer says mind-boggling. What did the mun taste like? What did we learn? It says kitzapichis bidvash. It was like honey coated with oil. So Chassam Sofer, you can't ask me any questions on this. I'll just tell you the concept, right? I could tell you, but then I'd have to shoot you. But I don't. I'm just telling you what the Chassam Sofer says. The reason the fruits of Eretz Yisrael were oversized is there's a special energy coming down from Shemayim that makes them special blessed fruits. The grapes, the figs, the pomegranates all had that energy. But the honey and the oil, that energy was already used. Where was that energy? That energy already went into the mun to make it taste like honey and oil. So then it's back to what Blake said, the dates and the olives were not oversized. So they didn't bring back dates and olives because that doesn't serve their purpose. Their whole purpose was to intimidate the Jewish people. But since that energy was already taken from them and was put into the mun, they weren't oversized. So they have no agenda to bring back the dates and the olives. That's what the Chassam Sofer says. That's why they didn't bring back the dates and the olives. That's right. I can't tell you any more about that. I'm just telling you what I know. I had a question, well, doesn't Hashem have more energy? He's not limited. I don't know how energy works. Right? I don't know how energy works. I wasn't good. In fact, I dropped physics after 2 weeks. Right? So I don't know. But at the end of the day, there's sometimes as I tell you, sometimes you hear an idea that's like a painting. Either you see it or you don't. I can't explain fine art to you. Right? Sorry, the other way around. You can't explain it to me because I know nothing about it. Somebody who's got the feel for it, the sense for it, so you can take a look at a portrait and say, wow, there's something about this that's different. And the same thing when it comes to music. If you're listening to a concert, you'll see the classical music, there's something that you hear, right? You hear something. What am I supposed to be listening to? I can't help you. If you got to ask me that question, I can't help you. Sometimes you hear a concept, like the Chassam Sofer says over here, something about energy. You just hear you hear how big Torah is. Right? Exactly what does he mean and that I can't tell you. I can't tell you. But it shows you the consistency of the Torah because it answers the question of why didn't they bring back the dates of the olives. That's what the Chasam Sofer says. Okay, now they come back to the Jewish people, and it says in bottom line on page 800, and I'm sure that you guys have done this at some point in your life. We came to the land where you sent us. V'gam zavas cholav udvashi, and it flows with milk and honey. V'zeh pirya. Now, that's a very strange thing. People are trying to discourage other people, and you come back and you start telling them good things about the land of Israel. Why would you say something good? It's a land that flows with milk and honey. It's a land that flows with It's a land of why would you come back and say it's a land that flows with milk and honey? Why would you say that? So take a look at Rashi. Very interesting insight into human nature. Says Rashi, top of page 802, top line, right column. Zavas cholav udvashi. It's a land that flows with milk and honey. Says Rashi, kol dvar sheker, any falsehood. She'ein omrim bo ksas emes b'tchilasa, where there isn't a little truth, ein miskayim b'sofo. It's not gonna work. It means if you're ever gonna lie, you got to stick in a little truth. So those of you who ever in high school got a hold of a test in advance, not that any of you ever did. I'm not suspecting the innocent, but those who ever, if you ever got a hold of the test in advance. I mean, in our high school, the efforts that guys made, there was one of our chemistry teacher actually taught one of Chicago public schools. There were guys who went to the public school and looked for juniors in the Chicago public school. He was teaching Lane Tech, and actually found juniors in the other, and got Mr. Lewis's test in advance. Now, what happens when you get the test in advance? You assign numbers. The guy who got it, he gets 100. Now you get a 98, you get a 97, you get a 96. Not everybody the same thing. And when you're ever copying from somebody's paper, not that you ever did, all right. But if you ever copy from somebody's paper, never copy exactly because it's too obvious, and the lie is too obvious. So what you do is you have to make sure. By the way, in Beis Din, if two witnesses in Beis Din give the exact same report, then it always looks a little bit dodgy. Right, they have to suspect. So they're about to spread a lie about the land of Israel. If you're going to spread a lie, you got to start out with a little bit of truth. It's a land that flows with milk. Yeah, but that's the good news. Now we got some bad news for you. And then it says, Efes ki aza hayoshev be'haaretz. However, the Ramban says that word Efes is where they really messed up. Efes means negative. Forget about it. How does our school translate it? But is not a harsh enough term for Efes. Efes in modern Hebrew means zero. Efes means it's hopeless. That's really how we should translate. Efes, but it's hopeless. Because the people are the land, Ve'ha'orim betzuros gedos, well, they're very fortified cities. V'gam yelidei anak reinu sham. Amalek yoshev be'eretz. Amalek is in the south. Amalek has always been a thorn in the side. Ve'achiti ve'ktani ve'amori yoshev bahar. These nations are up in the mountains. Ve'ktani yoshev al yam ve'yari yarde. And so the what do you call it? They're already discouraging the people. Now at this point, the people are despondent. As soon as they say that, the people are like, "Oh my goodness, we're going to go in. We got women and children over here. We got to go in and take these people who are fortified." So immediately, Kalev speaks up. Vayahas Kalev esa amel Moshe. But Kalev silences the people to Moshe. Vayomer alona ala virashos akinu yochol nuchala. Kalev says, "Shh." Gets everybody says, "Is that all Moshe has done?" So everybody thought he was going to say something negative. That's how he started out. It says, "Is that all Ben Amram has done to us?" And everybody goes, "Oh, let's hear this. This is going to be good too." He says, "He split the sea and he brought us out of Egypt. And we could trust him. Don't worry about it." So Kalev stands up against the entire people. Now, you know what's remarkable about this? Kalev was married to who? Miriam. Miriam had a son.
Hur.
Huh? Hur. What happened to Hur?
Hur died during the golden calf.
Hur got there the golden calf. He didn't die.
He just ripped apart by the
He was killed. Why was he killed?
Because he stood against the law.
Stood up against the people. So here's the father of Hur. He saw his son. His son died, the golden calf. And he does the exact same thing. He's not afraid. Kalev gets up and he stands down the people. So at that point, when Kalev says we could go in, so then the Torah says 6 lines to the top. Now watch this. Now they say it straight out. We can't go up. They're too strong. They brought a negative report. It's a land that consumes its inhabitants. The people we saw there are people of measure. Now, Rashi says 2 things here. He says, first of all, it's a land that consumes its inhabitants. And this is, again, how data is a tricky thing. Everywhere they went, they were seeing funerals. There were big funerals taking place. Why did HaKadosh Baruch Hu create? People from the land were dying. Why? People from the land were dying in order that they shouldn't notice the spies. You got a group of 12 guys are walking in with streimels and beards, and every few hours they stop to make a minyan, and all of a sudden you all hear out in the field, Amen, Yehei, Shmei, Rabbi, and I got a mincha over there. You got a bunch of Jewish guys that are sitting around, singing Ani Mamin or something, having a tish. How are you going to distract the people from seeing them? These guys certainly don't look like the people in the land. It's like you get on the airplanes. You get on the airplane, you see people and you see Jews. There was a minyan on the plane, and somebody's benching, and in the airport somebody's davening. They say, how are you going to do this? So HaKadosh Baruch Hu had created a situation, people are dying. So what do they come back and say? Hey, everywhere we went, we saw funerals. The land is contaminated. It's people, it causes people to die. Says the Stipler, 1 second. If the air in the land is contaminated, what do you think the fruit's going to look like? Right? The fruit's not going to look giant and luscious, right? It's going to be pockmarked and it's going to have bugs and it's going to be rotten, right? What kind of nonsense is that? And why did HaKadosh Baruch Hu do it? HaKadosh Baruch Hu did it in order to distract the people. So you go and you misread the data because that's how you want to interpret that. But even more, in the time of the bubonic plague, what kind of funerals did they have? Mass. Like none. They had wheelbarrows, and you dump bodies onto the wheelbarrows and dump them into a grave. No funeral. So if they're having funerals, that means it's not a land that there's normally plague. Otherwise, they wouldn't be having funerals. That means all of the data could have been interpreted in the other direction. And when you want to see things a certain way, imagine you're going out with a girl. She's a single daughter of a 91-year-old billionaire who's on a respirator. And so you're going out with the single daughter of a 90-year-old billionaire who's on a respirator, and she's got every quality. And you're sitting in a restaurant with her, and a bug starts crawling across the table, and this girl goes like that. Now you can read that 2 ways. Wow, she's got a sense of humor too. Right? That's one way to interpret it. The other way is she's a cruel what do you call it? Who I wouldn't want this to be the mother of my children. Oh, how are you going to read the data? It depends which way you want to read it. There are 2 ways to read it, and therefore they're interpreting the data in their benefit, for their benefit. And then they say the people are anshe midos. Anshe midos, Rashi says, they're giants. When a real tall person walks into the room, guy's really outstandingly tall. We had a guy in our neighborhood. He was living in my neighborhood for about 30 years. The guy was probably, I think he's the tallest frum Jew in Israel. And every time, for 30 years, I've been looking at this guy thinking to myself, I'm supposed to be davening. I'm thinking to myself, is he 7'1" or 6'11"? Exactly how tall. When I walk into the room, nobody's like, ooh, wow. That must be 5'7" right there. Nobody's like, no, 5'8.5". No, nobody's looking. A tall guy who walks into the room, the first thing you're thinking is, wow, I wonder how tall this guy is. That's what Rashi says. They're anshe midos. They're so tall that your natural reaction is, I wonder how tall that guy actually is. I wonder what would you assign this guy? Mary, were you going to ask a question? Yeah.
I mean, also, we said that there's some contradictions in the statements from very different sides. Even in which the land consumes the inhabitants, and then it says, but they are huge, so
Right. That's the contradiction.
That's also like
Right.
but
They're giants, and so why aren't they being consumed? You know, lands that are contaminated don't grow people who you have to give them what do you call it? The other interpretation is, why is it, you know, when you work on what we call character improvement, we call midos, right? Working on your midos. Why is it called midos? You work on your anger is a midah, and selfishness is a midah, generosity is a midah. Why is it called a midah? Why are these character traits when you know, you got to work on your midos a little bit? Why is that called midos? The answer is because the word midah means a measure. And all character traits, anger is not necessarily a negative thing. If you get angry at sinners, it's a good thing. So you have to measure every character trait. Generosity could be good, generosity is not good. If you're generous a proper way, that's good. But if you're overly generous, which leaves yourself without anything, then it's not good. You have to measure, when should I be generous? How generous should I be? Ego. Is ego a good thing or a bad thing? We use it, it's got a negative connotation. Ooh, boy, has he got an ego, right? We all have to have some ego. Because if you have no ego at all, you walk around looking bedraggled, you don't shower, and you look like, what do you call it, like Charles Manson. Right? Then so that you have to have a certain amount of self-respect. Where's that line exactly between self-respect and ego, which is inappropriate? That's why they're called midos. So according to one of the Mefarshim, they're saying, these are people who are anshe midos. These are people who measured out everything. They didn't overeat, they didn't overdrink, they didn't underdrink, they didn't smoke, they didn't, right? They everything in their life is measured out, and still they're dying all over the place. To the contrary, we're the opposite. They're giants and they're anshe midos, and they're still dying all over the place. So imagine what's going to happen to us. Imagine what's going to happen to us. They could twist it. You could twist things and twist it in the opposite direction. You could always twist it if that's what you're looking to do. Okay. So the people get, the people get nervous and they start crying. And then HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, what do you call it? HaKadosh Baruch Hu gets upset. And then one last question. One last question. We'll have to leave it for the time being, but there's one last question. Hashem says to the people, this is where the punishment is going to happen. And it's on page... where is it? What page? What page is it?
Isn't it in 804?
Where does he give the punishment? 806. Where is it? Oh, here we go. Page 808. Page 808. B'mispar hayamim, page 808. There's the punishment for the people. B'mispar hayamim asher, it's Pasuk Lamed Daled. It's about 10 lines from the bottom. B'mispar hayamim asher tartem es ha'aretz, so the number of days that you spied out the land, which is 40 days, arboim yom. Yom lashana, 1 day per year, tisu es avonesechem arboim shana. You're going to bear it 40 years. Vidatem es tenuasi. Punishment. You went 40 days, and you brought a negative report, 40 years in the desert. They were on the cusp, they were on the verge of going into Eretz Yisrael. 40 years in the desert. Now you're going to get 40 years. And they're going to wander around. The problem is that it says, Yom L'Shana, 1 day per year. How would you say it if you were giving the assignment?
1 day per year.
I wouldn't say 1 day per year. I would say 1 year per day. Here's the difference. Yom L'Shana. It should say Shana L'Yom. I'm telling you what the punishment is. The punishment isn't 1 day per year. The punishment is 1 year per day. Right? Shana L'Yom. You see the problem, gentlemen. Yeah. Hashem says to the Jews, 808, Pasuk Lamed Daled. B'mispar hayamim asher tartem es ha'aretz, by the number of days that you spied out the land, arboim yom, 40 days. Yom l'shana, Yom l'shana. 1 day per year, 1 day per year. That makes sense. Should be 1 year per day, not 1 day per year. Tisa l'arbaim shana v'datam es tinuasi. You hear the problem? Shouldn't be. It should be a year per day, not a day per year. So the Mefarshim say, this is a decree that all the men in the desert, none of them are going to live to go into Eretz Yisrael except for Yoshua and Kalev. They died. How did they die? They dug graves on the 9th of Av. And then they got into the graves that night. They dug their own graves.
Why?
Then,
Why did they just go? They went inside their own grave?
because Hashem said so.
Okay.
So they dug graves. All the males lay down in the grave. And then, what was it, 20,000? How many did not get up in the morning? They overslept the alarm, right? They died. Some got up. I mean, can you imagine that? Everybody lies down in the grave, and some are going to get up, and most are going to get up in the morning, and some are not.
Wait, how many died up?
600,000 divided by 40 is how much?
Like 40?
15,000? 15,000 died each year. So the commentators say that's why it says Yom L'Shana. It was 1 day per year that the punishment took place. That the Torah is not telling you right now what the ratio is on the punishment. He's telling you Yom L'Shana, 1 day per year is going to be the punishment, and then on top of that, it's going to go on for 40 years. So Yom L'Shana, it's not Shana L'Yom. It's not. In other words, the Torah is not telling you at this point what the proportion. It's 1 year per day. It's Yom L'Shana. 1 day per year is when the punishment takes place. That everybody digs their graves. I had a guy here once, Ohr Somayach. He told me he was traveling. He was somewhere in the backwoods of Virginia. I think he was somewhere out in the woods of Virginia. He was hiking on his own, and it's nighttime, and he's looking for a place to sleep. So he lies down. There's a little crevice in the ground. So he lies down in this crevice. He covers up with a blanket. He wakes up in the morning. He's covered with cobwebs, and he starts looking around, and he sees right behind him there's a big cross. He had laid down in a grave. How do you like that? Yeah, I like that. He's from now. It's enough to get anybody religious. Yeah, okay. So the what do you call it? It's 1 day per year. 1 day per year is when they lie down in the graves, and then 15,000 people die that night. I mean, could you imagine? Could you imagine what it's like? Everybody's in the grave. Boy, I don't know what kind of sleep that was. You know, and they died 1 day. Okay, then.
Wouldn't they die throughout the year also?
No, they died 1 day per year. 1 day per year they died. The people who were older, yes, but the people between 20 and 60 is 1 day per year. Yeah,
Wait,
yeah.
so could you go bungee? Like, so you could be like reckless throughout the year because like you wouldn't die.
No. HaKadosh Baruch Hu does not. You can't be reckless. No. Nobody in the desert was reckless. They were learning Torah and eating man. They weren't bungee jumping. Yeah, go ahead.
That's one thing that in the final year, no one died.
Right. In the final year, 15,000. There is an opinion that says the final year, 15,000 did not die. Correct.
How could that happen? The entire generation needed to die.
If HaKadosh Baruch Hu, if he has mercy on them and gives them, they claim it's like Truma, where you give 1/60th. Yeah. Mayor, where are you at?
No, I mean, just if we make the number, like if it's 1 day a year that, well, we said it's 600,000, right? Like it's 15,000 a year. I'm just where do we get the 40? I'm just curious about.
Where do you get the 40?
From the 40 days.
40 times 50, yeah.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
I'm just wondering, what difference would it have made when they said that we can't enter this land if they had the clouds of glory that were there and they followed it wherever it went?
That's a good question. I don't remember the answer to that question. I don't remember. I think I have somewhere that I saw that the clouds moved based on the attitude of the people. I'm not sure. It's a good question. If the clouds were moving or not moving, or they're saying even if the clouds move, we can't. That's suicide. Because you don't need the clouds. Hashem said to go. Hashem said to go. It's like, well, no, we can't go. It could be they're saying, listen, even if the clouds go, we can't go. And it could be that the clouds didn't go into Eretz Yisrael. That also, it could be the.
That Miriam died at that point? Or?
Well, the clouds went left when Aaron died, but they came back in the merit of Moshe. I don't know how the clouds work. All right, gentlemen, have a good trip tomorrow. Thanks, Anton.